Welcome everyone to Discover This. Today we're going to tell a story of a guy who was a family man, he was a working man, and he was also a full patch member of the Hells Angels. And he was murdered out in the Mojave Desert in California. Christian Tate grew up in the Santa Maria area of California, and he enlisted in the Coast Guard, and he served 6 years in the Coast Guard, serving in both the Atlantic and the Pacific regions. In the Pacific region, he was stationed here at the San Diego Coast Guard Station, here on San Diego Bay, across from the airport. By all accounts, he loved his time with the Coast Guard, but after 6 years, it was time to move on. And Christian Tate got a full-time job with Everingham Brothers Bait Company in San Diego, working in both the commercial side and the sport fishing side of the company. Another job he enjoyed. But Christian Tate had another full-time job. He was a full patch member of the San Diego charter of the Hells Angels. So Christian Tate lived in Lakeside, California. And he lived there with his wife and young daughter. And they lived on a piece of property that had a big main house, 2 guest houses, and some garage and storage buildings. And this is where he would come and go to and from work, to and from the Hells Angels clubhouse. Now that property at the time was owned by, and the person who lived in the main house was the president of the San Diego charter of the Hells Angels. And he would rent the guest houses to members or let them use them and let people store their stuff in the garages and storage buildings. And Christian Tate and his family lived in one of the guest houses. At the end of April 2002, Christian Tate and other members of the San Diego Charter Hells Angels gathered up, and they started preparing to head to the Laughlin, Nevada for the annual Laughlin Run, a big motorcycle rally out in the desert. Big deal every year. So once they got their bikes ready and everything, they hit the highway and headed to Nevada. So Christian Tate and the Dago Hells Angels all arrived in Laughlin, Nevada, and they started their weekend by hanging out with their brothers from other charters from around the country. Now, if you remember our video on the Laughlin Run riot, you remember that most of the Hells Angels stayed at what was then the Flamingo. It's now the Aquarius, but with a few others sprinkled around in Laughlin and also across the river in Bullhead City. Most of them stayed here.
On this remote stretch of I-40 in San Bernardino County, about an hour after the Laughlin shootout, Hells Angel Christian Tate, known as Christo, was shot dead while riding home to San Diego.
Now, Christian Tate left Laughlin, Nevada in the middle of the night, and he got onto Interstate 40 down near Needles, California, and started heading west. And when he got to the area right around in here, a car was coming up behind him, and when he got to that area of the Bismarck Wash that we just passed, the car came up alongside of him and shot Christian Tate multiple times in the back and in the torso, killing him. So you can see in this photo that the media obtained from law enforcement, Christian Tate's motorcycle on the Bismarck Wash overcrossing. Now the bike is standing up now, it was laying down, but that's the general area where the bike was laying and Christian Tate's body was laying. Now you can see how desolate it is out here. You can see the highway off in the distance. That general area over there straight ahead is roughly the area where Christian Tate was killed. But you can see there's nothing out here, and at night again it's pitch black. Very remote, very little traffic in the middle of the night. Around 3 a.m., a passerby called 911 to report a motorcycle crash. And when CHP arrived, they found the motorcycle, and then they found Christian Tate, and it was no motorcycle crash. He had been shot. Now, by this time, all law enforcement knew what was happening in Laughlin, about 60+ miles east of where Christian Tate was found. And they all figured this had something to do with what happened in Laughlin. In Laughlin, 2 Hells Angels and 1 Mongol were dead, and Laughlin was shut down at the time. No one in or out. So Christian Tate had to have left Laughlin before it was locked down, and this is about an hour or so west of Laughlin, Nevada. Now this is Ludlow. Christian Tate didn't quite make it to Ludlow. He was shot about a few miles east of here. If he had made it to Ludlow, he would have stopped for gas, stretched his legs, possibly got something to drink, and then got back on the highway and headed to San Diego. Now, San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department took over the homicide investigation, and it's been slow going since that day in 2002. People in the outlaw biker world don't talk with cops, and they rarely cooperate. However, around 2005, the federal government indicted a number of the Dago charter of the Hells Angels for numerous crimes. Christian Tate's father happened to get a copy of that federal indictment to read, and inside that indictment was this statement: on or about September 17, 2002, and this is where a Hells Angel's name is redacted, was provided with the physical description of a Mongol named Bill, who it was believed was bragging about the killing of Christian Tate. And that's the last piece of information the family has received in this investigation. Christian Tate's funeral was held on Friday, May 3rd, 2002 in Santa Maria, California. Close to 700 people attended his funeral. There was a Coast Guard color guard, and some of the pallbearers were Hells Angels. And following the funeral, a wake was held at the Ventura County Hells Angels Clubhouse. So that's going to do it, ladies and gentlemen, for this story about Christian Tate and his murder. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department still has this as an open cold case homicide.
Detective Rick Ells hopes for a break in the case.
This isn't the kind of thing that someone does and then never mentions it again.
And they release this flyer from time to time. But I appreciate you watching. Just another story in this series of videos on outlaw biker violence. So we'll see you next time on Discover This. Keep watching. We got lots more to come.